back to aquaSplainer. In the past here on the channel, we've made an aquascape in a 22-liter cube aquarium. We've made a tiny aquascape in a mayonnaise jar, and we've made a Dutch-inspired aquascape in a 13-liter glass bowl. Today we're going to do a project that I've really been looking forward to. A while back I was searching online for inspiration and I found a giant wine glass. I showed it to you guys here on the channel and I asked one question: red or white? You chose red, and so what we're going to do is we're going to make a red wine inspired aquascape in my giant wine glass. Let's take a quick look at the glass. I bought it online for about £30. The bowl itself holds 3.2 liters of water, which is the same as about 0.85 US gallons. Something we've got to really take note of is how fragile it is. This is really well made, but it's also really thin and delicate. That means two things. First of all, when we're placing hardscape or using our aquascaping tools in the bowl, we're going to have to be really careful about dinging it. I think it'll chip quite easily. Secondly, the narrowness of the rim limits our lighting options. I think it would be unwise to use a light that clips onto the side, because if you knock the light, it might snap the glass. Other than that, I think it's a really elegant piece and a great place to create an aquascape. We're going to follow a dirted tank method. So at the base of our wine glass aquascape will be a layer of wild mud. I scooped this mud up from a pile dredged from a local canal. In the wild, this soil supports all kinds of plants in an ecosystem bursting with life. It's full of minerals, nutrients, and decaying organic matter to feed the red plants we put into the nanoscape. We'll cover the mud with a layer of play sand. I was going to find a red sand or gravel substrate, but as we're hoping to use red hardscape plants and fauna, I thought that might be too much. The sand has been rinsed clean of dust. It's great for holding the mud down, slowly releasing its nutrients, and it's easy to plant in. Play sand is also very cheap to buy. Here's a little collection of hardscape that we might be able to use in the wine glass aquascape. I've got a little piece of driftwood, which is just about the right size for the bowl. And I've got some red colored rock, taking inspiration from the red wine theme. I wonder if there's a way we can create like a nice composition, bringing together elements, gluing them, and placing them in the bowl. The theme when it comes to our plants is red, 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 and red to go with our red wine. Our feature plant might just be this Lobelia cardinalis. Look at the lovely deep red hue of its leaves. The potted plants don't look so great. They're looking a bit worse for wear, but we'll make the best of it. Starting with this Ludwigia palustris super mini red. We've got Rotala rotundifolia blood red. We'll get that planted in there. Hopefully it will revive. And Phyllanthus fluitans, which is also known as red root floater. Let's get the substrate into the glass. First, I'm going to chop the mud up to loosen it and maybe wet it a little. If there are any stones or pieces of wood, I'll remove them. I'll just grab a ball of mud, squeeze out some of the air, and then place it in the wine glass and pack it down. I'll keep adding mud until there's about an inch in there, flatten it as much as possible, and push out any further bubbles. Let's just give the glass a little spray and wipe away any stray mud with some kitchen roll. That way we won't see it mixing with the sand on the side, It just looks a little nicer. Okay, it's that satisfying moment when we pour in the sand. We'll use about 1 inch to 1.5 inches, enough to cap the mud and hold the plants firmly but gently in place. Our scape is looking good. I bought some red rocks to tie in with the red wine theme and a piece of bogwood that's about the right size for the glass. For me, hardscaping is the hardest part of aquascaping, especially in a confined space like our wine glass. I also find the idea of gluing pieces of wood and rock together a little counterintuitive. If you're trying to create something natural, why would you do that? Well, we're going to do it anyway. To get the composition right, I'm doing a lot of experimenting with the different forms I've got, trying things out. Basically, I think I can make a strong diagonal with the bogwood and show its grain and texture for visual interest. Then use the rocks to add color and create counterlines. But I don't know what people will think of it. Here's what it looked like while I was testing out different ideas. While testing the options, I noticed that one of the rocks has an interesting form and a narrow edge, and that there's a split in the bogwood we can use to secure them together. The rock will weigh the wood down so it won't float up when we add water. I'm going to use a small piece of cotton wool, wedge it between the point where the wood and rock touch, then make a solid join between them with a little squirt of superglue. When it's dry, this substance is safe in any aquarium. I'll use the same technique again a couple more times, using regular household tweezers to push the cotton wool into place at points where the rock and wood touch. We'll just want to be sure that the wood doesn't come loose from its weight and move within the composition of the aquascape after we add the water. In larger aquascapes, you might end up gluing dozens of joins, but 3 should be enough for our wine glass nanoscape. The bond is solid. Now let's get it in there and see how it looks on the sand and inside the glass. I want to make sure it's sturdy, that it sinks into the sand a little, and that it looks good. One of the other rocks has a nice little lump of white crystal that I'd like to take advantage of. It's not red, but it could make an elegant highlight in the red wine-inspired aquascape. With our main elevation of wood in place, it takes a little play to get the second rock into a good position. Yes, it might move around a little when we add the plants, but I think this is working, so let's give it a twirl. Even with a tiny aquascape like this, just 3.2 liters, you'll always be fine-tuning and tweaking. Right now, I'm looking at how my feature plant might sit in the wine glass. I've got 5 pieces of rock, so I also want to see if we can add any more. Lying this one down might make a nice little platform in the foreground for snails or even shrimp to feed on, if we add them, that is. Just before we introduce the plants, I'm going to put some root tabs into the sand. Although we've got the mud at the bottom of the aquascape to rely on for carbon and nutrients for the plants, this time I'd like to give the plants a little extra help. I ordered these ones from Swell UK. Each stick can be broken up into smaller pieces so that we can fit them into our limited space. You just insert them into the soil with the tweezers, then plant the roots just above the tab. Because the plants I ordered haven't arrived in the best condition, this might help them get back on track. I love this Lobelia cardinalis, our first plant. This is the first time I've grown it, and I think with its broad, deep red leaves, it's going to be the highlight of the wine glass aquascape. With its cohesive root ball, it's easy to plant into the dry sand. Beautiful. Lobelia cardinalis. Just look at it. Next up, we have Rotala rotundifolia blood red. The pot didn't look in great condition, but washing off the jelly culture and separating it into clumps, the Rotala doesn't look too bad. It's usually a stem plant, but because it's been confined to a pot, the stems are all twisted, crooked, and woven together. So clumps will have to be the way forward. I try to align each one so that the roots can go into the sand with a little wiggling of the tweezers. The plant doesn't arrive red. This coloration develops over time once you've got it growing in your aquascape. It's going to look good around the right-hand side of this scape. I can't wait for it to straighten and grow out red. Plant number 3 is Ludwigia palustris mini super red. Its condition is not as good as that of the Rotala coming out of the pot. I'm just going to follow the same method to plant it. I've separated it into clumps, and I'm hoping that the roots will be more or less towards the bottom of each grouping and that they'll take. Hopefully the plant will also straighten out as it grows, aided by the root tabs we put in earlier. It looks a bit more straggly than the Rotala. I think this one is meant to turn a darker, richer red than the Rotala when and if it develops that coloration. Fingers crossed. Now it's all planted, here's how it looks. Time to siphon in some dechlorinated water. I'm doing this over a sponge to stop the flow from blasting the sand everywhere. When it's full, out comes the sponge, and it's time to get out the trusty red nano net to remove any plant detritus that has floated to the top. The final plant in our red wine-inspired theme is Phyllanthus fluitans, also called red root floaters. Removing them from the pot, I'm going to try and salvage the best plants, as these have not traveled well. These plants are great for aquascaping. Fast growing, they quickly take nitrates from the water, and when they're healthy, the roots are a beautiful red color. They're here to balance the water in this little aquascape. Let's get the light set up. I'm using a Uimica full spectrum light. It's 10 watts with 48 LEDs in white, red, and blue to promote plant growth. It's not actually designed for aquarium plants. The stand is also quite flimsy, but I think it will do the job. So I'm going to switch it on, and then I'm going to switch it on to the 9-hour cycle, which is the one in the middle. There we go. As you can see, there's a few different color settings. Normal, red. I think we're going to go for normal. And then in terms of intensity, let's check what there is. There are 10 very similar settings. 9 hours. Let's go for a medium setting like that. Okay, now the light's set. I'm not completely confident in how well these red root floaters will do, but we'll give them a few days and see if they can revive themselves. If not, perhaps we'll have to get a new pot. However, our Rotala blood red on the left and our Ludwigia super red on the right, although they were buckled over and bent down in their packaging, they seem to be straightening up and looking towards the light a little bit more today. And hopefully we're going to see them develop a nice red color in the coming days, weeks, and months. I'll just use the aquascaping tweezers to disturb the sand a bit and let any extra bubbles float to the surface. And we'll add a tiny bladder snail to the aquascape to eat waste plant matter. It's day 5 now of our giant wine glass aquascape experiment. There's a few little things, as you can see, that we need to bring back on track. First of all, the tannins in the wood have seeped into the water, so we're going to do a water change to bring back a nice crystal clear look. Floating at the surface, as you can see, the red root floaters really haven't improved since we put them in. I was hoping they would be revived, but they haven't. So we're going to replace them with some new. And then we'll take a look at the plants around the aquascape and bring in a new little resident as well. So let's scoop up those dying red root floaters with our amazing red mini net. I'm siphoning off the water. I know it's red, which suits the red wine theme, but that's because of the tannins from the dragonwood. It really should be clear. With the water out, I'm going to push the hardscape into the sand a little more, as it's been bumped a few times. I just want to make it secure. Now I'll pipe in some crystal clear dechlorinated water using the same method as before with the sponge. I'll probably have to do this several more times as tannins will continue to seep out of the wood into the water. Now let's add a fresh batch of Phyllanthus fruitans, our red root floaters. I bought these from Aqua Essentials here in the UK, and they're in really good health compared to the previous pack. There's more than enough too, so I might add some to the cube downstairs. Let's just spread them around nicely here. I'm really happy with these. Over the last few days, I've added some small bladder snails from my other tanks to help keep the wine glass and its plants clean and tidy. Now we're going to introduce an important new resident. This red racer is a type of nerite snail with a lovely pattern on its shell, and obviously its red coloration goes perfectly with our wine glass theme. Racer is probably not the best name for these guys. They might have stripes and chevron patterns, but they're slow movers even as snails go. Nevertheless, it brings beauty to the wine glass. So it's day 14 of our giant wine glass aquascape, and I think things are looking pretty good. The rotala is reaching up quite close to the surface now, and I've noticed there's a red tinge coming to some of its leaves. The roots of the red root floaters are also turning reddish. Other than that, I think the whole composition is looking really nice. We don't normally bring you 14 days into the process of building a new aquascape like we have this time, but it's been really enjoyable. It's been a pleasure to bring this video to you. If you like what you've seen and it's given you a little bit of inspiration, please drop us a like or even subscribe to the channel, and we'll bring you more videos like this one. In the meantime, as they say in the wine world, chin chin.